Today on the Uplevel Dairy Podcast, we are wrapping up 2024 and kicking off 2025 as I bring on a guest, a fellow podcast host from Canada, Tracy Burnet, host of the Impact Farming Podcast. Tracy and I are going to trade some notes today on our one words for 2024, how they changed us, how they challenged us, and what we're looking forward to in 2025, right here on the Uplevel Dairy Podcast. We had met through the podcasting space, specifically the farming podcasting space, a little over a year ago. One of the things that I really felt bonded over was, first of all, an ambition to serve the farming community, me and dairy, and you with what you do in Impact Farming Podcast. Could you just share for a moment, for some of my listeners that maybe aren't as familiar with you and Impact Farming, a little bit about who you are and what you do?
Absolutely. So I'm Tracy Burnet, and our media platform is Farm Marketer. We are one of the leading agriculture media platforms in Canada. And within our platform, we have a podcast and video show called the Impact Farming Show. I started it 7 years ago, and we cover mainly farm business management, transition planning, mental health. We get into a little bit of ag tech and always helping agriculture companies tell their story as well. So that's my passion, and that's why I started the show 7 years in, and we're going strong.
And you are based out of Canada, correct?
Yes, Manitoba, Canada.
But really, you serve the farming community beyond those borders and provide a great value, because the challenges that farmers face in Canada are not that much different than the ones that they face in the US when it comes to things like succession planning, transition planning that you talk about a lot. And when we had connected last year, Tracy, we both had shared that we like to choose like a word to focus on for the year ahead. And this episode today is really just bringing out what I call the one word concept. This is something I've been doing for about 10 years now, I think. And it's choosing one word that you live by for the year. And every year it has been a word that I feel like God puts on my heart, and it comes to life in ways I can't even explain and expect. And once again in 2024, it happened. And I know you are a one word person as well. So tell me a little bit about what choosing a word has been like for you and what your word for 2024 was.
Choosing a word for me helps me have focus and intention, right? I think that's the goal behind it. And funny enough, my word for 2024 was focus. And I could probably throw in a handful of words for 2024, but I'm glad I picked that one. Business and life are quite a journey, and there's ups and downs, highs and lows. And 2024 was really a repivot year, recalibrate, refocus work type of year for me. So coming off of the pandemic and all those changes, it was like, okay, we're at this place in life. We need to focus and get back on track. Focus served me well.
I'm going to ask you to expand in a way that I've asked a couple of my other guests to do as well. And that is to share, how did 2024 challenge you, and how did it change you?
It challenged and changed me so many ways. I've been very fortunate to have launched this business 17 years ago, and I've had a very, very solid energy, trajectory in my business, a momentum. It's been very solid and steady, and I can't just leave 2024 on its own, because 2024 was largely shaped by that 20 to 21, 22, 23, those couple of years there. For me, I had a big pivot and a change in my life and business, and focus was needed because personally I changed, the world changed, business changed a little bit. My vibe and energy and interests as a person, as a business person changed. There was just so much change in those couple of years leading up to 2024. So really 2024 was just the tail end of learning some lessons from a bigger period. That's how I would wrap it up, and getting my focus back. And then challenged me in the fact that I was frustrated and I couldn't get the old Tracy and the old vibe, and nothing wrong, but we just have times in our life. So it really frustrated me that I was in that energy, and it was just so different for me. I don't think a lot of business people talk about this, and I think it's so important. Our business is driven by the person. And when the person's going through something, that can't help but change. And it's again, nothing big or odd or bad. It's just a pivot time in my life and career.
That's so interesting. And COVID did change a lot of things. It changed the way we do business. It changed our personal relationships and interactions with other humans. It changed the way that we communicate. And it changed our kids. It changed generations. I'd be curious if other people in the last year started to see that experience did change how they felt about things or the direction they wanted to head. And so I bet you're not alone in that. You talk about that challenge of feeling like, you didn't have the momentum, but that also, to me, I hear growth, because metaphorically, you think about a seed. When you plant a seed, there is a time when the seed is under the soil, getting some water, and starting to do little things, but it takes a little while. But it needs that dormancy. It needs the dormancy so that it can eventually shoot up, right, out of the ground, catch the sunlight, and grow. Does that kind of reflect how you felt in the last year? Was kind of like the seed?
You're nailing it. You got it. That's exactly what it is. And it's very different for my personal energy, and it's a very different momentum. It's very hard to deal with as a large chunk of time. And then finally, I'm like, okay, whatever you resist, persist. What are the lessons here? I'll share something with you, a book. I know you're a book lover. I was trying to embrace and look at it differently and realize that business and personal, you ebb and flow. There's a law of rhythm in life. Businesses have cycles. People have cycles in their life. So I was really starting to embrace those lessons, focus on the good, focus on what I need to build, focus on what I want to see for the future. Can I share the book now?
Yes. Yes.
Peaks and valleys. I don't know how or why. And I often say you don't know how or why, but when you need something, I've always found that the right book is just dropped in front of me, just by way of conversation or the right podcast, whatever you need for the next phase of your growth. I always find that somehow it just gets slipped into my awareness. I found out about this book. I'm like, wow, it kind of seems cheesy. And then I read a little bit about it, ordered it immediately. For someone going through a hard time, we know that you go through hard times and things change, but reading a book really helps you feel like it's not just you, like you're not broken at that moment. It's not the end of the world. Peaks and valleys happen in life. You can't be on the peak all the time. Sometimes valleys happen, whether it's a personal issue or a business issue. There's peaks and valleys. And then when I finally read this, I literally screenshotted almost every page. Oh, I bought Kindle first. Because I couldn't wait, ordered it. I screenshotted every page, printed it out, and then I was just like highlighting like crazy. It was that game changing. So I wanted to share that with your audience too, because especially in agriculture, we know it's very cyclical. And then you're going, it's all my fault. I'm horrible, right? And then you just question yourself when naturally it's a peak to the valley. They happen. We just need to learn the lessons, see if there's anything we could do different, but stop resisting it and just stop taking it so personal. And then when you let go of that, and that was finally my 2024 was focus. It's like, okay, read this book. It kind of sealed the deal. It just kind of gave me that, you're okay. This happens, Tracy. And it wrapped up that period, focused on what's positive and what I want for 2024.
2024 set you up for what you're walking into in 2025. And the book is Peaks and Valleys. The author is Spencer Johnson. Same guy who wrote Who Moved My Cheese. And of course, I also have a book right on my desk as well to share.
Another part of this period in my life, this chunk, and then the lesson and the integration in 2024 and focusing. One of the things I enjoyed and have learned the beauty in a pivot period is that when you slow down, I was no longer running to trade shows and very busy. I mean, I like to think I made great decisions, but when you really slow down, you have the ability to hear and think and process and plan differently. This has been life changing. By slowing down physically, for me, I'm a very busy, active person, right? Like a go, go, go energy. By slowing down, I really slowed down and then became more intentional with my life. When you're not running 100 different directions, the funny thing, and where 2024's word focus came in, focus. So what I realized after those couple years and those lessons, I'm like, okay, let's focus. And one of the things as a business owner, you're wearing a lot of hats. I didn't quite realize how quickly within a day you're changing hats and touching each project, marketing, sales, podcasting, and getting a little bit of everything done. But with the focus word for 2024, I started focusing my time and being intentional. And that's probably the biggest lesson in that focus word. Each month, I can't plan my businesses in quarters and one initiative because it doesn't roll that way. But I take my month and every segment of my business, I take the month and I plan one major goal for each part of that business. So I have agent advertising, industry advertising, podcasts. So I'd take October, good old fashioned paper and pen, write it there and say, podcast, my big goal. And this was a way to deliberately focus and move the business massively. Where when you're hat changing and not focusing on those big business changers, you're touching a lot of stuff, you're getting a lot of stuff done, but you're not making big moves because you're one person scattered. This was like podcasts, Tracy. You need to do, and it didn't need to be massive, but it was something I felt would be a huge game changer for my podcast, like a lead magnet for November. So I created a lead magnet to give the audience books and resources for transition planning. That's a big item, not massive in the grand scheme of things, but it just never quite got done. So focusing, if you want to say an example of focus and what has changed, that is game changing. And then each month I stare at that paper and it's like, and it's just one thing. And if you don't meet it, it's like, whoa, scatter, come on, let's focus. If you didn't achieve it, move it to the next month and let's get on it. And I have made leaps and bounds in my business, structure wise, and moving these things forward, where other years, of course, you get a lot done, you achieve, but those big business developments that got pushed didn't happen, right?
The difference between being busy and being productive. And so that was your game changer for the year as you pulled focus into focus. It was just identifying, I'll call them like the big rocks, right? Like one big rock in each of your areas of your business. And I think that's something that any of us, and you lean into our friends that we serve in the farming community, are similar, right? One person that is driving a lot of things and making a lot of decisions in their business, even if they have people working for them, they're still kind of that sole proprietor type of person. And that is sometimes our greatest strength. But also, as you had just shared, it also can be a challenge as well. And I can relate to that with really looking at all the things that you have on your plate and narrowing it down to what are the ones that are the needle movers and that can make the biggest difference and get you the furthest, the fastest. And it's not always the busy work, right? It's not always responding to every last minute request and everything else. It's having that strong intention around what some of those big rocks are. Did you find that if you didn't get something done in that month, that it was almost like just having one thing in each of those areas was almost like an accountability check to be like, okay, if I didn't get that one thing done, What did I do that prevented me in my habits and my time management that I couldn't get that one thing done that I know is important? Did it hold you almost accountable to yourself in a new way?
It kept me focused and it also prevented overwhelm because I find I would always be setting five big things for each area. It's like, okay, let's do this. And then it was just so much with the day to day requirements of life and business. It's like, I got to roll up the fencing. I got to do this. By taking those big five items or 10 and just saying, okay, I just got to roll up the fence before snow. That's my one item because one of my favorite expressions, he who tries to catch many rabbits catches none. It's so true. It's like when your brain is focused on 10 big goals and you know you don't have time for all of them, you just kind of fizzle out and then you distract yourself. You don't get any done. When you go, okay, I got to roll up the fence this week. Next week, I'll go pick up the wiring in the pasture. For me, it'd be this item, this item. And then I just like, I knocked it out of the park this year. And being aware of what needs to be done when, because you're like, okay, I have five big items for each of these areas of my business. That's what I want to get done. But it's like, wait a minute, that one's the most important. And those don't even need to be done till next quarter. So why are they there, right? It takes a lot off your brain, focuses you, and it helps you actually get traction, like move that big boulder up the mountain type of thing, right?
Thanks for sharing these examples because I think so many people can relate to something in their professional life, personal life that they can use this tip for. And I know I'll be using it as well, rolling into 2025. Speaking of 2025, did you pick a new word for 2025?
I'm so excited. Ignite. Ignite.
Ignite.
Yeah, it's a big, I'm climbing the mountain again and I'm excited about it. I drank my energy drink and I'm going. And it's funny when you look back and as you age and as things happen in life and you realize those years, you integrate the lessons. Those are big learnings. And I've been very fortunate to have a steady energy and momentum in life. So that was a big learning. Then focus and then really get a lot of these big rocks moved. Now this year, I have pretty much all those big rocks moved up the mountain and I'm going to go run around the top of the mountain. I don't know. I'm out of analogies. But this year, I've built a strong foundation, got the mojo back, focus, and I'm really looking at igniting the year.
This is why I love the one word concept, especially when you do it year after year. When I think the more you tune in to where you're at in life and the direction you want to go, the words build. And so for you, had you not been in this state of focus for 2024, do you think you'd be ready to ignite and light that firecracker for 2025?
I'd be spinning around on all the same stuff, trying to accomplish the same stuff I did in 2024. I'd be trying to do that if I wasn't focused and building that foundation by just focusing on those one items per business area a month. Now I just built such a foundation and then it builds on each other.
I'm excited for you, Tracy, and for Impact Farming and for all the people that you touch through the work that you do in the farming and agriculture communities. So it'll be an exciting 2025 and congrats on what you accomplished in 2024. And sometimes what you accomplish, see, here's the interesting thing about achievement and accomplishment is sometimes when, like you talk about being a busy person, right? So many of us, especially those of us that grew up working on farms, like our sense of achievement and accomplishment is getting things done. It's kind of task oriented sometimes. And so when we're not checking as many boxes or moving as many needles as we think we should, we sometimes miss that we actually are making movements and progress. It's just in a different way. And for you, it was slowing down so that you could grab a gear and go into high gear in 2025.
I'm curious. Do you want to share yours?
So 2024, my one word was bold. And every year I put it on a sticky note. I always tie up my one word with a Bible verse or something that just really speaks to it and is what I live by for the year. The verse that I pulled for this year with bold was from 2 Timothy 1:7. It says, God does not call us to be shy with our gifts, but bold and loving and sensible. When bold came up for me earlier in the year, I wasn't quite sure what direction that was going to go. What I really settled into was recognizing what your gifts are. And what I realized is there's gifts that are your skill sets. And the gift I've come to recognize that God has given me is the ability to help people see the good in others, to the ability to draw out stories. I kind of come to describe what I do as a podcast host this way. I build the stage and I hold the spotlight, and then I shine it on the guests that I have on here so that other people can see what I see when I speak to them. I want to shine on them the best light that I can. And I've realized, I think more and more, that God's given me the gift to do that. God's also given me the gift of an instinct and kind of an intuition to really get a good feel and gut read for how I can best serve the dairy community. And in this past year, one of the challenges that I really laid upon myself was to constantly come back and ask, does this serve the dairy producer? Does this serve my people that I have dedicated my life to serving? Does this serve the dairy community? The result of that has been the podcast has continued to really grow. And I'm so proud of that. Not just because of, does it make me feel good to have analytics and metrics that I see growth in? Absolutely. But what means the most to me is when I have people that I picture in my mind that I want to serve come to me and say that I was able to provide something for them that made a difference in their life. That's when I knew that, those are the moments when I know that I'm doing the right thing. I'm in the right place. Being bold and trusting my own instinct and utilizing that gift is exactly where I'm supposed to be. And I think the other thing that I realized too, I'll go back once again to that word gifts. God doesn't want us to be shy with our gifts. Our skills, our gifts are our blessings. And I think one of the things that also really came up in the past year that maybe others can relate to is you can get so busy, again, right? Busy being busy. When you own a business, whether it's a farm or podcasting business like us or whatever else, you have to make choices over how you spend your time, right? And there were moments where I was getting invited to do some pretty cool things, like speak at some events or do some cool things. And I had to come back and give some bold no's, because my greatest gifts are my wonderful husband and my 4 beautiful kids. I want to make sure that they're getting my best yes first, and that I'm saving it for them. And I think going back to the word gifts and the word bold is being bold in saying yes to some pretty cool things, but also saying some bold no's. Sometimes the things that a year or two ago I could have only prayed for, and being able to just come back into my own and say, does this opportunity still serve me? Does it serve not just me, but my family and the direction in which I want to continue to grow and serve the dairy industry? So that's been bold for 2024.
Ooh, I like it. I might steal your word now. No, I like bold, you ignite. Okay, maybe bold. Bold's going to be my 2026 word.
Are you having word envy?
I want your word. It's better.
It is your word for a reason.
I love that word.
So that was 2024. Someday I should really actually write down all of my words for the year, because they continue to build upon each other. Now I've been looking at what does 2025 look like and choosing the word for that. And I see once again a progression in how that reflects our own personal growth and the direction that I'm headed for 2025 as well.
I'm curious. Do tell. Don't hold out. I want to ask you one question about bold. How many years have you been podcasting now?
This is coming into year 3 as my own independent podcast.
So I'm curious also, and if you want to answer this, go ahead. If not, that's okay. But are you finding, because I know I'm a podcaster and all of that as well, that each year and each interview, you become more comfortable and you're also trying to find your voice and your confidence? Does bold reflect that part of the journey as well, becoming more bold in your role?
Oh, for sure. I think for me with boldness, here's a story to reflect on that in the past year. When I started Uplevel Dairy, I'm a big vision person. I have to see things in my mind. And when I fall in love with a vision, that's what I'm running after. One of the visions that I had in my mind for the last couple of years was going to visit a dairy in Kansas and do some interviews with the family members of that dairy. And I can't say that this is all to my credit. This was to multiple people that this all came together, but I was able to make that visit this year to a dairy and a family that I have so much respect and admiration for, McCarty Family Farms in Kansas, was having the ability to say, okay, that is attainable. I can be bold in believing that I can bring value to not just my audience, but I can honor this family and the work that they've done, the business that they've created, but more importantly, who they are. I can be someone who can honor them through the work that I do. An example of living out what bold meant in 2024 was the fact that was something I dreamed of when I went on my own, was the day that I would sit down with this family and do these interviews. And it happened this year.
Oh, I love it. And I can see my journey in that as well, because being a podcaster, you have to be bold. The thing is, being bold is not about, hi, I'm Peggy. Hi, I'm Tracy. I have a podcast. We're being bold because we have a vision. You're being bold because you know you can bring this to the world. Every time you step into a new level and become more bold, it's about your community. It's about serving your level of service, right? But it's not always easy because there's that human element to us as well, right? Bold's a beautiful word. Totally beautiful word. Way to go. I love it.
You know, bold didn't look like, on the outside, it probably didn't look like me being louder or putting myself out there more. It was kind of like this series of just like kind of micro actions that when I step back now, when I look back, I'm like, oh, like I did some cool things. Here's another example, and this relates back to the inspiration that I get from the people that have joined me on the podcast. A lot of my listeners, they'll hear me talk about runners or interview fellow runners in the dairy industry, and it's because I love to run. I'm a runner, and I had not done a full marathon in about 12 years, and I said I would never do another one. Well, lo and behold, this is what happens when you surround yourself by high-performing people. I'm interviewing one of my regular guests and good friend, Tommy Ersch, who's a dairyman, and Claire Eldernick, another dairyman from Michigan. And we're talking about running and their marathons and different distance running things that they've done. And I was like, I'm getting this bug. I'm getting this little itch. And I kind of want to run a marathon. I've done halves for the last few years and really love the half. And I know from my back experience that like a marathon it's a lot. Like it's a lot of training, takes a lot out of you. Well, so fast forward, I ended up actually running 2 marathons this year. And one of them was able to actually coerce 4 other women into doing it with me. We did the all women's marathon in Savannah, Georgia in November, sponsored by Team Milk. So it was this whole dairy industry thing and amazing dairy industry support, milk everywhere at this marathon. Interestingly, I did not see myself doing that at the beginning of 2024, but I realized that the boldness of that action, like it wasn't just for myself, it was for these other women. We were able to just really encourage each other and have a really cool and incredible bond from running 26.2 miles together. You want to know somebody, you spend several hours running when you're sweaty, smelly, tired, and you're hungry. Like, I mean, you want to know somebody, you run a marathon with them. And let me tell you about these women that I ran with. They are warriors. A couple of them were first-time marathoners. I got to watch them rise to their own courage and grit. Another one, she literally was like bleeding through her shoes. So these dairy girls, Katie Schultz, Kelly Davis, Julie Veldhuis, they were my marathon crew. And what a day it was. Running a marathon wasn't that bold, but looking back, I'm like, well, I guess it kind of was. And running too is either really dumb or really bold. I'm not sure which.
That is bold. And then amplifying it and getting other women to step into that. Good for you. That's amazing. So you covered some challenges, what you learned. Anything else you want to add on your 2024? Then I definitely need to know 2025.
Okay, I'm going to skip to 2025 because I think I talked enough about 2024. My one word for 2025, stewardship. And here's where it comes from. You talked about books. This is one of my favorite books. It's called The Circle Maker by Mark Batterson. If someone's watching this on video, you can see, Tracy, that I have all these sticky notes in this thing. This is one of my favorite books. I send it to people. It's a book about praying circles around your biggest dreams and greatest fears. And it has been such a guide for me in so many ways through envisioning this business and the impact that I want it to have, but also in praying and taking action. There is a line in this book It talks about success. And one of the things I always ask people on my podcast is, what does success look like to you? This book says success is spelled stewardship, and stewardship is spelled success. To really let that sink in about how we define success in so many ways. And this word stewardship, I think it really came to light for me because looking back at my word for 2024, bold, not being shy with God's gifts, but being bold and loving and sensible, it made me really stop and take inventory on the way that God has blessed. He's blessed this podcast and this platform in ways I couldn't have even imagined. He's put me in a position to serve in a big way that I want to just make sure that I'm doing it wisely. He's given me beautiful children, a wonderful husband, and a whole community of youth that I mentor through the dairy industry as well. And it really set on me one day the incredible responsibility that when we have opportunities, it's because we are in a position to serve in ways that are maybe different than they once were. This is my reframe for 2025 to say, of all the things that God's given me, including time, how am I stewarding all of those things to be of the greatest service that I can in every capacity in which I have a seat or position? So that's 2025 is stewardship.
Oh, I love that. And I think you realize the power in having a platform. I have been realizing that more and more too. And I love your word because so many people get a platform on the internet and don't use it wisely. I have seen people lead people astray with their platform and their words. Words are powerful. That's beautiful that you're recognizing what you have and the power of your platform to lead people.
And to do it, to always come back to heart of service and doing it. My philosophy with everything that I do in the business, if I always put the farmer first, if that's at the heart and core, is serving the people that I'm here to serve, I'll trust that it will all come together. And you talk about the power of words. And as we close out today, I want to challenge others to recognize the power of words, specifically the power of choosing one word and what that can do. Look at what you shared, Tracy, the way that focus was such a core for what 2024 was, a culmination of the years leading up to that, but it's also what lit the fire for Ignite for you in 2025. And that's so exciting. And this is where sharing your word gives us all something to watch, in the year ahead and to be inspired by. I want to put that challenge on others that if they are considering how to look at 2025, how to frame that up for themselves, to choose a word, pray on it, look for what comes up, think about where you're at, the changes that you want to make. There's actually a book called My One Word that a friend gave me several years back. That was what I based my one word habit and routine around. That's a resource that you can pick up, but ultimately it's the stories like what you shared. And I hope there's maybe a little inspiration in the ones that I've shared that somebody else listening can take that and say, okay, I'm going to choose a word for 2025. I sure hope that anybody that does that takes a minute to shoot me a little message, DM me and let me know what their word was. I want to keep inventory and accountability for others to see how it turns out for them in 2025. Well, Tracy, I'm so grateful that you were able to jump on with me and wrap up 2024 on a high note and kick 2025 into high gear here with me on the Uplevel Dairy Podcast. For our listeners that would like to follow you on your journey, we'll put a link in the show notes to the Impact Farming Podcast and any other places that they might be able to find and follow you along.
Thank you so much, Peggy, for having me. And I hope that you have a wonderful 2025 and everybody in your audience as well. Let's do this, guys.
All right, let's go. Thank you, Tracy.